Have you ever wondered what it's like to be a ghost? Just floating around looking for a friend, but instead you get Kevin and Joe. Let's dive into the hilarious story of our lonely ghost and his frustrating encounters with these two bumbling paranormal investigators. So picture this. A spooky old mansion, creaky floors, ominous shadows.
All locked up.
Our ghost, let's call him Greg, has been haunting this place for decades. All he wants is a buddy to chat with, maybe watch a movie or play some board games. But nope, not today. Enter Kevin and Joe.
At the light, turn left onto Pleasant Street.
Every single noise is a ghostly moan. The floorboard
So we're gonna
creaks
meet him there.
ghost.
Okay.
The wind
At the gas
blows.
station.
Okay.
Definitely a ghost. And
What is it,
Joe?
your friend?
Joe's got his trusty EMF meter, which he waves around like a wizard casting spells. I'm picking up a strong reading, Kev. Yeah, Joe, that's probably the Wi-Fi. Greg tries his best to get their attention in a friendly way. He gently floats a book off the shelf.
At the light, turn
Kevin
left onto
screams,
Langley Parkway.
"Poltergeist!" And Joe starts waving sage around like he's at a music festival. Poor Greg just wanted to recommend a good read. Next, Greg decides to try the classic ghost move writing on a foggy mirror. He scribbles
In 3/4 of a mile, turn right onto Clinton Street.
Kevin sees it and yells, "Demonic message!" Joe starts chanting something in Latin he learned from a horror movie. Greg's just like, "Really, guys? Really?" One night, our ghostly friend gets a bit more creative. He arranges some candles in a heart shape, hoping to spread some love. Kevin trips over them, and Joe thinks it's a sign of an ancient ritual. We're dealing with a love ghost, Kev. Greg face palming.
At the next light, turn right.
Despair. Despite their best or worst efforts, Kevin and Joe never quite get the hint. They set up cameras and motion sensors, hoping for a big paranormal breakthrough. But Greg, tired of their antics, decides to have some fun. He starts photobombing their footage, pulling faces and making bunny ears behind Kevin. The duo, reviewing the footage, can't believe their eyes.
At the light, turn right onto Clinton Street.
Finally having some fun. In the end, Greg realizes that maybe humans aren't so bad after all. Sure, Kevin and Joe are a bit clueless, but they've given him some much-needed entertainment. No longer lonely, Greg continues to haunt the mansion, now with a sense of humor and a couple of unwitting companions. So next time you hear a bump in the night...
In 3/4 of a mile, turn right to merge onto I-89 North.
Greg having a laugh. Either way, keep your sage and EMF meters handy because you never know what kind of paranormal hilarity might unfold. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more spooky and silly tales. And see you next time.
The old Victorian house loomed before them, a skeletal silhouette against the dying light. Joe, ever the pragmatist, checked his equipment, his breath misting in the cold air.
Kevin, more sensitive to the unseen, felt a prickle of unease. The house breathed
Turn right to merge onto I-89 North.
Stepping through the threshold, dust swirled thick with the weight of forgotten years. The air hung heavy, stale, and oppressive.
There's
Joe
lights
planted a
here
boot on the
now.
creaking floorboard, a sardonic grin
That's
on his
new.
face. Home sweet home,
That's
Kev.
gonna make things
Kevin,
a lot
unable to shake
easier.
the feeling of being watched, ran a hand through his hair.
The issue is the
Let's just hope
traffic
the residents
off the
aren't
highway
home.
problem.
As they venture deeper, shadows seem to stretch and writhe, fueled by the whispers of the past.
Joe, ever the skeptic, dismissed the chill that snaked down his spine as a draft. Gotta love these old places, always full of surprises.
For about 59 miles, continue straight.
Vibrate from the very walls. You hear that? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Joe paused, his flashlight beam dancing across the cobwebs.
Hear what? You're letting your imagination run wild. Narrator, silence.
But even as he spoke, a floorboard groaned above them, the sound heavy and deliberate. The hair on Kevin's arms stood on end.
That didn't sound like any settling I've ever heard. He raised his EVP recorder. Anything you want to say? We're listening.
The only reply was the unsettling silence that seemed to amplify the fear crawling up Kevin's throat. A sudden crash from the floor above shattered the quiet. Joe, adrenaline surging, whipped around, his flashlight beam slicing through the oppressive darkness.
Whatever's up there, it wants to play.
He started up the creaking stairs, each step echoing in the suffocating silence. Kevin, heart pounding, followed close behind. As they reached the landing, a cold wind slammed against them, a guttural growl echoing in their ears. The air turned frigid, biting at their exposed skin. Before them, a swirling mass of shadows coalesced, taking on a vaguely humanoid form. The growl intensified, morphing into a chilling voice that seemed to claw at their sanity.
Leave this place. You are not welcome here.
Joe, momentarily stunned by the apparition, shook his head, fear replaced by a surge of adrenaline-fueled excitement. He raised his camera, the red light blinking. The entity, a vortex of rage and darkness, lunged. The force of it sent Joe crashing into the wall, his camera clattering to the floor. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he scrambled back, his eyes fixed on the malevolent being. Kevin, we mean you no harm. We just want to understand. Kevin, reacting instinctively, threw himself between Joe and the entity, his voice trembling but firm. The entity, its form flickering, seemed to hesitate, its growls laced with confusion. The entity, its form flickering, seemed to hesitate, its growls laced with confusion. It had expected fear, flight. But these two, they stood their ground, their eyes reflecting a strange mix of terror and determination. Joe, as Joe.
We're not here to fight.
Joe, clutching his injured arm, scrambled for his camera. Kevin, as Kevin. We just want to understand, Kevin said, his voice surprisingly steady. He raised his hands in a gesture of peace. He knew the risks, knew how dangerous this could be, but something in the entity's hesitation gave him a sliver of hope. For a moment, the only sound was the frantic thumping of their hearts. The entity, its form shifting, seemed to be assessing them, its energy palpable, suffocating. The entity, with another guttural growl, dissipated into the shadows as quickly as it had appeared. The oppressive air lifted, replaced by an eerie calm. Joe, as Joe. Did we get it? Joe, clutching his injured arm, looked at the spot where the entity had stood, his heart still pounding. Kevin, as Kevin. I think so. Kevin, still shaking, checked his equipment. His voice trembled as he played back the EVP recording. The guttural voice, laced with anger and pain, filled the room. Demon as demon, leave this place. They left the house as dawn broke, the rising sun a stark contrast to the darkness they had encountered. They had entered as skeptics, but they left forever changed. The evidence they carried a chilling testament to the unseen world that existed just beyond our perception. The experience, while terrifying, had ignited a spark in them, a thirst for understanding the unknown that no amount of fear could extinguish. They knew with chilling certainty that their journey had just begun. We drove in silence, the old dirt road getting rougher, the anticipation growing. A chill cut through the air as we stepped out of the truck. The forest was alive, shadows twisting and turning under the pale moonlight. We were here for answers, for a glimpse into the other side. Joe, we ventured deeper, our flashlights flickering across gnarled branches and the skeletal remains of dead trees. The silence was broken only by the crunching of leaves beneath our feet. It felt heavy here, oppressive, like something was watching, waiting. We were being watched. A twig snapped in the distance. We spun around, hearts pounding, flashlights scanning the darkness. Nothing. Joe, did you hear that? I nodded, every sense on high alert. There it was again, a faint rustling, like footsteps approaching but never arriving. A wave of unease washed over me, cold and unwelcome. Kevin, then the whispers started. Soft at first, unintelligible murmurs carried on the wind. We strained to make sense of them, the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, swirling around us like a vortex of tormented souls. They were close now, too close. We found a...
Hello.
You gonna try to make me be an asshole?
No.
What Cumbies were you thinking I was talking about?
Vermont.
Duh.
Bathed in an unnatural, almost phosphorescent
How do you
glow.
solve that?
The air felt thick, charged with static. This felt like the epicenter, the heart of the darkness. We set up our equipment, the spirit box crackling to life. Joe, is anyone here with us? Joe asked, his voice firm despite the tremor in
I
his
don't know why she...
The planchette began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. It darted across the board, stopping on letters, forming words. Kevin, beware. It spelled out the chilling message hanging in the air.
I don't really care
My blood
if I
ran cold,
looked
we
on
were playing
camera
with
as
fire.
an
It was
asshole
about to
at
burn
that
us.
moment.
The air grew heavy, suffocating. Kevin, a wave of nausea rolled over me. Joe, This was more than just residual energy. Something malevolent had taken notice. The temperature plummeted, the air turning frigid. My breath formed icy clouds in the sudden cold. Joe, we need to leave now.
Why do I need
The spirit box erupted in a cacophony of screams and growls, the sound tearing through the silence.
Why does she
The
ask?
planchette flew off the board, spinning wildly in the air before clattering to the ground. I could feel the blood draining from my face. We were in way over our heads. This was pure evil, and it was hungry. We scrambled to pack up our gear, our movements frantic, adrenaline surging through our veins. I glanced over my shoulder and saw it, a shadowy figure coalescing in the darkness behind us. Terror lent speed to our feet.
I only become
We
one
didn't
because I'm
speak,
the only
didn't dare
one doing
breathe as we
everything.
ran blindly through the
I
forest.
had to pack this whole
The only
truck by
sound was the
myself,
pounding of our
basically.
hearts and the crashing of branches as we fled.
Babe's the only one that
The
listens,
forest
really.
seemed to twist and turn, the trees reaching
Can
out with
anybody
skeletal
bring
fingers
their
to
stuff
bar
out
our
so it can
escape.
get packed?
We
Babe's the
stumbled
first
through
one
the
who got
undergrowth,
up
our
and grabbed
lungs
her
burning,
stuff.
our legs screaming
Here,
for
Joe.
mercy. Just when we thought we were
Thank you,
done
Faith.
for, we saw it. A light
Easy.
in the distance. Salvation
So
or a
she's
trap?
on all my nerves
The light
today.
led us to a clearing, in the centre of which stood a dilapidated cottage, its
Everybody
windows
else
dark,
is.
its door hanging precariously by one hinge. It looked abandoned, forgotten. Desperate for shelter,
That's
we
why I was
approached
hoping this car
cautiously.
ride would be good
The air
for
around
me,
the
just
cottage
to get
felt
it
even
over
heavier,
with.
colder.
Get to
a
the
shiver
gas
ran down my
station,
spine.
calm the
Joe,
hell down.
we shouldn't be here. We had no choice. The entity from the forest was still out there. I pushed the creaking door open and
Yeah,
stepped
because all we
inside.
need to do
The
is
stench of
all
decay
sends
hit
me
me like
the
a physical
address
blow.
to
The
Chittenden
air was
for
thick with the
backup,
smell of mildew
and I follow
something
her
else,
this time.
something metallic and cloying. The faintest flicker of movement in the shadows sent a jolt of terror through me. We were not alone. We had stumbled out of the frying pan and into the fire. This night was far from over.
The team gathered, excited and anxious. Last-minute checks, gear loaded, laughter filled the air. A calm before the storm, a shared anticipation of the unknown. We were about to embark on a journey into the heart of darkness, a place whispered to be the most haunted on Earth. This wasn't just another investigation to us. This was personal. We'd heard the stories, the chilling
throw me
accounts of
under the bus,
unexplained
it's fine.
phenomena, the desperate pleas of those who barely escaped.
Oh no.
This place, known only as Shadow's Gate, had haunted our dreams for months. We were prepared for anything. EMF readers, EVP recorders, thermal cameras, we had it all. More importantly, we had each other, a bond forged in countless haunted locations, a trust that ran deeper than blood. We were a team, a family, ready to face whatever awaited us on the other side of fear. The journey was long, the road winding through dense ancient forests. The sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows across our path. A palpable tension settled in the vehicle, the weight of the unknown pressing down on us. We finally arrived at the foot of a desolate hill. The air grew heavy, the silence deafening, broken only by the rustling of leaves. Atop the hill stood the ruins of an old asylum, its silhouette a jagged scar against the dying light. Shadow's Gate. The building loomed before us, a monolith of decay and despair. Windows like vacant eyes stared back at us. A shiver ran down my spine, a primal instinct warning me of the...
Hello.
Hey, what packets for the chicken did you buy?
The wings and the drumsticks.
Okay, and what seasoning packets did you buy was my question. Please tell me you bought some packets so we could do the shake and
They
bake.
didn't have.
What do you mean they didn't have packets? You didn't go to the seasoning section?
We did, but they didn't have any packets.
Uh-huh. So what do we have for seasoning?
Garlic powder, onion powder.
Rotisserie
Gross.
chicken and something
That's
else.
not what I was talking about. What do we have for seasoning?
That's what we have, Joe.
I didn't hear you. What?
Rotisserie chicken and something else.
What? Something what?
Rotisserie chicken.
Oh.
Rotisserie chicken and Mrs. Dash's chicken flavoring.
Fuck that shit. God, maybe I should have went in. I would have found it. Trying to kill me for camp.
I'm not trying to kill you.
Well, I don't like Mrs. Dash. I told you specifically we needed the packets.
Well, they didn't have packets.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they do. I would have went in and I would have found them exactly where they would have been. So now I gotta make a pit stop to grab some money I didn't want to spend.
We had crossed the threshold into the
That
unknown.
won't return to plane unless you unlock your phone.
Stepping inside, we were greeted by an oppressive silence, broken only by the sound of our own breathing. The air was thick with the smell of decay and something else, something ancient and unsettling. Dust-covered furniture lay scattered, remnants of lives shattered within these walls. We began setting up our equipment, our movements punctuated by the click of tripods and the whirring of cameras. The silence was unnerving, a suffocating blanket that seemed to absorb all sound. It felt as though the building itself was watching us, waiting for us to make a mistake. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped, a bone-chilling cold that seeped in.
Market basket.
The silence deepened, becoming almost tangible. It was then that we heard it, a faint scratching sound, like fingernails on a chalkboard, echoing from the depths of the building. The scratching grew louder, more insistent. We exchanged nervous glances.
Starting route to Market Basket.
Then a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence.
In about 2.5 miles, take exit 9 onto New Hampshire Route 103 toward Bradford.
Our hearts pounded in our chests as we rushed towards the source of the scream. The air grew colder and the smell of decay intensified. We could feel a presence, dark and malevolent, closing in around us. As we rounded a corner, the screaming stopped abruptly. Silence descended once more, heavier this time, filled with an unspoken
Are you
threat.
okay with that?
We were no longer alone.
Options?
Something was here with us.
In about 2 miles, take exit 9 onto New Hampshire Route 103 toward Bradford.
Or at least something different.
Gateway to the unknown.
Yeah.
The EMF reader spiked. The numbers
Every
climbing
store
off the
has
charts.
those little
A
packets.
cold wind whipped through the hallway, extinguishing our lights and plunging us into darkness. When the wind died down, we saw it. A swirling vortex of energy, shimmering at the end of the hall. The portal pulsed with an eerie green light, beckoning us closer. We could feel its power, ancient and raw, emanating outwards. It was a tear in the fabric of reality, a gateway to somewhere else. Fear warred with curiosity. We had never encountered anything like this before. Was this the source of the paranormal activity? Could this be the gateway to another realm, a place where the dead walked among the living? Section 6, Trapped in Nightmare. Our cameraman, drawn by an unseen force, stepped towards the portal. Before we could stop him, he was sucked into the swirling vortex, his screams echoing through the building one last time. The portal vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind a chilling silence. Panic surged through
Watch
us.
the gas station
We
be
were
like
trapped in this
15
Use
minutes
the right
away.
lane to take exit 9 onto New Hampshire
Because
Route
it's only 40
103 toward
minutes
Bradford.
away.
The air grew
From
thick with a
Market Basket.
suffocating dread. We were no longer investigating the paranormal, we were living it. The shadows seemed to come alive, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes. Whispers swirled around us, taunting us with our deepest fears. We were lost in a
Take the
labyrinth
exit,
with no
then
escape.
turn right onto Route 103 West.
Section 7. The price of curiosity.
At the stop sign,
We pressed
turn
on,
right onto
desperate
Route
to find a way
103
out.
West toward Newport.
Each step was a battle against the unseen forces that surrounded us. The building seemed to twist and turn upon itself, a labyrinth designed to break our spirits. We encountered manifestations we couldn't explain, objects moving on their own, disembodied voices whispering our names, cold spectral figures that vanished into thin air. Each encounter chipped away at our sanity, pushing us closer to the brink. The weight of our cameraman's disappearance pressed down on us. We had come to this place seeking answers.
For about
all we had
17
found was
miles,
terror.
continue straight.
We had paid the price of curiosity, and now we were trapped in a nightmare with no end in sight. Section 8, Fight for Survival. As the night wore on, our hope began to dwindle. We were exhausted, both physically and mentally. The constant fear and paranoia were taking their toll, but we couldn't give up. We had to keep fighting for survival. We used our remaining strength to barricade ourselves in one of the rooms, hoping to find a moment's respite from the horrors that surrounded us. But the darkness offered no sanctuary. The whispers continued, the shadows danced, and the fear gnawed at our insides. We knew that if we didn't escape soon, we would be lost forever in this haunted abyss. Our resolve hardened, fueled by a primal instinct to survive. We would not become another tragic chapter in the history of Shadows Gate. Section 9, no turning back. Just when our hope dwindled to a flicker, we discovered a hidden passage behind a crumbling wall. It was a desperate gamble, but we had nothing left to lose. With renewed determination, we pushed forward into the unknown. The passage was narrow and treacherous, but we pressed on, our bodies screaming in protest. The air grew colder and the stench of decay intensified. We were deep within the belly of the beast, and we could feel its malevolent presence all around us. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we emerged into the cool night air. The first rays of dawn were breaking over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the desolate landscape. We had escaped the clutches of Shadows Gate, forever marked by our encounter with the darkness. There would be time for reflection later, time to process the horrors we had witnessed. But for now, we were content to breathe in the fresh air.
Sit back.
Grateful to have survived the night of terror. We had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had looked back, and we knew that we would never be the same.
All right, folks, gather around for a bone-chilling tale. Picture this, a friendly ghost living his best afterlife. This spirit loves to prank the living, harmless fun. But one night, things took a spine-tingling turn. You see, this friendly ghost had his own haunt, a cozy little corner of an old mansion. He'd startle guests with flickering lights and creaky floors just for laughs. But then, a team of paranormal investigators broke the peace. Uninvited and unwelcome, they barged in, armed with gadgets and gizmos, determined to find him. Now, our ghost friend tried his usual tricks. Lights flickering, cold drafts, even a few floating objects. But these trespassers wouldn't budge. They were undeterred, stubbornly searching every nook and cranny. Desperate, the friendly ghost knew he had to up his game. So, he called for backup. And who answered? His demon cousin. Yep, you heard that right. A demon. When this dark entity arrived, the atmosphere changed instantly. Shadows deepened, and the air grew thick with dread. The investigators felt it too. Their gadgets went haywire, and cold fear gripped their hearts. It was time for them to leave. Doors slammed, and whispers echoed through the halls. The demon played no games, making it clear they were not welcome. Panicked and terrified, the investigators raced to their van, not daring to look back. With the intruders gone, the mansion returned to its eerie tranquility. The friendly ghost was relieved, his home safe once more. He thanked his demon cousin, who vanished back into the shadows. So, next time you hear a ghost story, remember this one. Not all spirits are out to harm, but even the friendly ones have their limits. And when they call for backup, you better believe things are about to get seriously spooky. Stay tuned for more hair-raising tales, and remember, sometimes it's best to respect the unknown. Who knows what, or who might be watching. Until next time, keep your lights on and your courage high. Later, ghouls and gals.
Divided we fall.
Hey there, cryptid enthusiasts. Tonight I'm taking you on a spine-chilling journey into the heart of darkness. Picture this. It was a dark and stormy night, the kind where the wind howls like a lost soul and the fog is so thick you can't see your own feet. I'd always been fascinated by the legend of Bigfoot, and this night was my chance to get closer than ever before. The forest was alive with the sounds of nature, but underneath it all there was something different. A low, guttural roar echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down my spine. As we moved deeper into the woods, the fog seemed to close in around us and the temperature dropped. Then, out of nowhere, a massive tree branch came hurtling towards us. It smashed into the ground, inches away, as if warning us that we weren't welcome. But we didn't turn back. No, we pressed on. The roar grew louder, more menacing. With every step, the anticipation built, our hearts pounding like a drum in our chests. We knew the risks, but the possibility of capturing undeniable proof of Bigfoot kept us going. Suddenly, a shadow moved in the fog. It was huge, towering over the underbrush. My camera was ready, my finger hovering over the button. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for, but just as quickly as it appeared, the shadow vanished, swallowed by the mist. We kept our eyes peeled, our senses heightened. The forest seemed to be playing tricks on us, every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs making us jump. And then there it was, a glimpse of something impossibly large, moving through the trees. I managed to snap a few photos, though they were blurry and obscured by the fog. The adrenaline was pumping now. We could hear heavy footsteps, the kind that make the ground tremble. Another branch flew past, and this time we knew we had to be cautious. The air was electric with tension. We set up our equipment, hoping to capture more footage. The night seemed to stretch on forever, each minute feeling like an hour. And then, just before dawn, we heard it. A roar so close it felt like it was inside our heads. We didn't see Bigfoot again that night, but we left with something almost as valuable. A story, an experience that would stay with us forever. The photos and videos we captured might be blurry and inconclusive, but the thrill of the hunt, the eerie sounds and the fleeting glimpses are what make the legend of Bigfoot so captivating. So whether you believe or not, remember this. It's the mystery and the adventure that keep us coming back for more. Who knows, maybe one day we'll get the undeniable proof we've been searching for. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring. Thanks for joining me on this dark night adventure. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more cryptid tales. Stay safe out there.
What, Abby?
The old car rumbled to a stop. Gravel crunched under its tires. Joe, Kevin, and Jeremy peered through the foggy windshield. There it was, Midnight Manor. The haunted hotel loomed before them. Its windows were dark, empty eyes. The moon cast eerie shadows across its weathered facade. We're really doing
In
this.
about 10
Kevin's
miles, turn
voice
left
quivered.
onto Bradford
Joe
Road.
nodded, his face set with determination. Jeremy clutched his camera, knuckles white. They had come to document the paranormal. Now, faced with the reality, fear crept in. The hotel seemed to watch them, waiting. They stepped out of the car. The night air was cold, damp. It clung to their skin like ghostly fingers. Crickets fell silent as they approached. Even nature seemed to hold its breath. The front doors stood ajar, as if inviting them in or warning them away.
Let's go.
Joe led the way, flashlight in hand. Its beam cut through the darkness. Kevin and Jeremy huddled close behind. Each step brought them closer to the unknown. The floorboards of the porch groaned beneath their feet. It was the sound of old secrets, of forgotten stories, and perhaps of lurking dangers. They crossed the threshold into Midnight Manor. The air inside was thick, musty. It smelled of rot and abandonment. Joe's flashlight revealed peeling wallpaper, cobwebs stretched across ornate chandeliers. Nature had begun to reclaim the hotel. Vines crept through broken windows, moss carpeted the once grand staircase.
Guys, maybe we should go.
Kevin's foot crunched on something. He looked down, then quickly away, a small animal skeleton, but curiosity pulled them deeper. They moved through the lobby. Dusty furniture loomed like sleeping beasts. A grand piano sat silent, its keys yellow with age. Jeremy's camera flashed, capturing the decay. Each picture seemed to anger the shadows. They grew darker, more menacing. The friends huddled closer together. Their breath came out in visible puffs. The temperature had dropped, suddenly, unnaturally. Upstairs, they found long hallways stretching into darkness. Doors hung off hinges like broken teeth. Some rooms were bare, others still held the ghosts of past guests. Suitcases lay open, clothes strewn about, as if their owners had fled in a hurry or never left at all. The hotel seemed to breathe around them. Walls creaked and settled. Or did something else move in the shadows? A sound echoed through the halls, faint at first, then louder. Did you hear that? They froze, listening. It came again, a low moan, like wind or a voice in pain.
It's just the building settling.
But his voice lacked conviction. The sound grew closer, more distinct. Kevin's flashlight flickered, died. Darkness pressed in around them. Joe's light barely held it at bay. The moaning stopped, replaced by something worse. Footsteps, slow, dragging footsteps coming towards them.
Hello?
His voice cracked. No response, just the steady approach of unseen feet. They backed away, hearts pounding, breath coming in short gasps. The footsteps grew louder, closer. A shadow moved at the end of the hall, took shape. A figure hunched and twisted, it shuffled into view. The beam of Joe's flashlight revealed a face, pale, sunken, eyes that gleamed with malice. Run. They turned and fled. The figure let out an inhuman shriek. It echoed off the walls, filled their ears, chased them down the hall. They ran blindly, terror giving them speed. Behind them, the footsteps quickened. The creature was giving chase, its cries growing louder, more frenzied. The hunt had begun.
Is everyone okay? Panic drove them forward. They raced down the hallway. Joe in the lead, Kevin close behind. Jeremy brought up the rear. The creature's shriek spurred them on. Its footsteps pounded closer. They reached the stairs, took them two at a time, risking falls in their haste to escape. Joe's flashlight beam bounced wildly. It cast crazy shadows on the walls, made the hotel seem alive, writhing around them. They reached the lobby. Furniture loomed in their path. They dodged and weaved, knocked over chairs, vaulted over tables. The front door was so close. Freedom just steps away. Behind them, a crash. The creature had stumbled, bought them precious seconds. They burst through the front doors. Cold night air hit their faces. They ran for the car. Keys fumbled. Engines sputtered to life. Tires squealed on gravel. They sped away. Hearts pounding, gasping for breath.
Joe asked. He glanced in the rearview mirror. His blood ran cold.
Where's Jeremy?
The back seat was empty. Kevin turned, eyes wide with horror. He was right behind me. They looked back at the hotel. It stood silent, dark. Jeremy was still inside with that thing. The car screeched to a halt. Silence fell, heavy, oppressive. Joe, we have to go back. His voice shook. Kevin, are you crazy? That thing is in there. But they both knew they couldn't leave Jeremy behind, not in that place, not alone. Inside the hotel, Jeremy huddled in a dark corner. He had tripped, fallen behind. Now he was lost, alone. His camera lay forgotten beside him. Every creak, every whisper of wind made him flinch. Where were Joe and Kevin? Had they escaped, or had the creature found them? He tried to steady his breathing, to think. He needed to find a way out, but which way? The hotel was a maze, and somewhere in its twisting halls that thing lurked, hunting, searching. Jeremy closed his eyes, prayed for courage, for rescue, for dawn to come and chase away the shadows. Outside, Joe and Kevin argued. Joe, we can't just leave him. Kevin paced, torn between fear and loyalty. Kevin, but how can we find him? That place is huge. They stared at the hotel. Its windows seemed to stare back, challenging them, daring them to enter again, to face what waited inside. Joe made his decision.
I'm going back in.
You can't. It's suicide.
But Joe's mind was set.
Jeremy's our friend. I won't abandon him.
He checked his flashlight, took a deep breath.
Wait here. If I'm not back in 30 minutes, call for help.
Kevin watched Joe walk back towards the hotel. The darkness seemed to swallow him. The front door creaked open, closed. Joe was gone. Kevin slumped against the car, alone, helpless. The night pressed in around him. Every sound made him jump. He checked his watch, counted the minutes. Inside, Joe moved cautiously. His flashlight swept back and forth, searching. He called out softly.
Jeremy, where are you?
No answer, just the settling of the old building. He climbed the stairs.
Abby,
Each step
sit
could
back.
give him away, alert
Now.
the creature. But he had to find Jeremy. The upper floor was a maze of shadows. Joe checked each room. His nerves stretched to breaking point. Any moment he expected to see that pale, twisted face, to hear that inhuman shriek. But he pressed on. Jeremy needed him. He wouldn't give up. Not until he found his friend. A sound caught Joe's attention. A whimper, barely audible. He followed it, heart pounding, flashlight beam shaking, there in a corner. A huddled figure.
Jeremy?
The figure looked up. Jeremy's face pale with fear. Relief flooded through Joe. He had found him, but their reunion was short-lived. A shriek split the air. The creature had found them too. Joe pulled Jeremy to his feet.
Run!
They fled down the hallway. The creature's cries echoed behind them. Closer, louder, they reached the stairs, took them at a dangerous pace. In the lobby, Joe's flashlight flickered, died. Darkness engulfed them. They stumbled, blind, crashing into furniture. The creature's footsteps thundered down the stairs. Joe felt for Jeremy's hand, found it, squeezed it.
This way.
He yelled, pulling them towards where he thought the exit was. Behind them, a crash. The creature had reached the lobby. Its shrieks filled the air, hungry, triumphant. Joe's hand found the door handle, turned it, stuck. He pushed harder. It gave way. They burst out into the night. Cool air hit them like a wave. Freedom, but the creature was right behind them. Kevin saw them emerge. His relief turned to horror as he spotted the creature. It burst from the hotel, a twisted, nightmarish shape. He gunned the engine. The car roared to life. "Hurry!" He screamed. Joe and Jeremy ran towards him, the creature hot on their heels. They were so close, just a few more steps. The creature's breath was hot on their necks. Its claws reached for them, grasping. Joe pushed Jeremy ahead.
Go!
He yelled. Jeremy stumbled, fell into the back seat. Joe dove in after him. The creature's claws raked his back. Kevin floored the accelerator. The car leapt forward, tires spinning on gravel. The creature shrieked in fury. It clung to the trunk, trying to pull itself in. Kevin swerved hard. The creature lost its grip, fell away. Its cries faded as they sped into the night. They didn't slow down, didn't look back. The hotel disappeared behind them, swallowed by the darkness. They drove in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The horrors they had witnessed, the narrow escape, the realization of how close they had come to death, or worse. Dawn was breaking as they reached town. The first rays of sunlight chased away the shadows, made the night's terrors seem distant, unreal. But the scratches on Joe's back were all too real, a reminder of their brush with the unknown. They pulled into Joe's driveway, sat in silence.
What was that thing?
Jeremy finally asked. No one had an answer. Kevin shook his head.
I don't know, and I don't want to know.
Joe winced as he
I don't
shifted
know, and I
his
don't
seat.
want to know.
Let's agree never to speak of this again.
He said. The others nodded. Some secrets were best left buried. They got out of the car, legs shaky, minds reeling. The normal world seemed strange now, changed. They had glimpsed something beyond understanding, something that shouldn't exist. It would haunt their dreams, make them fear the dark. But they had survived. They were safe, for now. As they parted ways, each to their own home, they shared a look, a silent agreement. Their adventure was over, but the memory would linger. Of the night they spent in Midnight Manor, of the creature that hunted them, and of the bonds of friendship that had saved them. They had faced the unknown together, and lived to tell the tale, though they never would.
Joe gripped the steering wheel, a grin plastered across his face.
Beside him, Kevin navigated, the map illuminated by the dashboard lights.
Music blasted. Laughter filled the car. This road trip promised freedom, adventure, brotherhood. They were young, invincible, ready to chase the horizon. Miles melted away, replaced by fleeting landscapes and the hum of the engine. Excitement crackled in the air, thicker than the summer heat. They were living, truly living. For the first time in a long time, the future shimmered with possibility. This trip, they promised each other, would be one for the books. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and bruised purple. The fuel
In 1
gauge blinked a
mile,
warning,
turn left
a
onto
glowing red
Bradford
eye in
Road.
the gathering darkness.
There, Kevin pointed, his voice tight with apprehension.
A dilapidated gas station materialized from the shadows, its neon sign flickering erratically. The air turned instantly colder, a shiver crawling down Joe's spine. They pulled up to the only pump, its rusted metal groaning in protest.
As Joe stepped out, a figure emerged from the gloom of the station. An old man, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, his eyes like chips of ice.
"Don't go out there tonight," the old man rasped, his voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "Not safe. Turn back." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken warnings.
Joe, though unnerved, forced a laugh. "Thanks for the advice, old-timer," he said, his voice braver than he felt.
Back on the road, the encounter lingered like a bad
you're
taste.
passing
Left
out.
onto
The old man's
Bradford
words
Road.
echoed in the silence. Don't go out there tonight. Joe tried to shake off the unease, turning the music up loud, but the feeling persisted.
Kevin, visibly shaken, traced a nervous finger along the map. "Maybe we should find a motel," he suggested, his voice barely a whisper.
Joe, determined not to appear scared, shook his head. "We're fine, Kev. Just a creepy old dude.
In about
Probably
3
trying to drum up
miles,
business."
take a slight left
He
turn
forced a
onto
chuckle,
Maple
but
Street.
it sounded hollow even to his own ears.
They pressed on into the night, the darkness outside mirroring the growing unease within the car. The highway stretched ahead, a seemingly endless ribbon leading them deeper into the unknown. Hours later, exhaustion gnawing at them, they pulled into a deserted rest stop. Rest Stop 13, the sign proclaimed, its paint peeling like scabs. The wind howled through the trees, an eerie, mournful sound. Joe cut the engine, plunging them into an unsettling silence. He mumbled, trying to convince himself more than Kevin. They dozed fitfully, haunted by unsettling dreams. A sudden crash, sharp and violent, ripped through the night. Joe sat bolt upright, his heart pounding against his ribs. The driver's side window shattered. Shards of glass glinted on the asphalt like malevolent eyes. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the drowsiness. Something wasn't right. This was no ordinary break-in. S1, media, unusual car break-in scene, just a quick nap. Adrenaline surged through Joe. "We gotta go now!" He roared, his voice tight with panic. Kevin, his face ashen, scrambled for his seatbelt. The engine sputtered, roared to life. Joe slammed his foot on the accelerator, tires spitting gravel as they lurched back onto the highway. The rest stop, with its shattered window and lingering sense of dread, receded into the darkness behind them. He didn't dare look back, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves, sounded like approaching footsteps. The old man's words echoed in his ears, a chilling prophecy fulfilled.
"Not safe, turn back."
They were running now, running blind, fleeing from an unseen terror. Dawn found them huddled in a brightly lit diner, the aroma of coffee a comforting counterpoint to the fear that still clung to them like a shroud. They hadn't spoken much during the frantic drive, their silence filled with unspoken terror and a shared sense of relief. Every mile had been a victory, a testament to their escape. As they recounted their experience, the details tumbling out in a jumbled rush, the events of the night took on a surreal quality. But the shattered window, the oppressive atmosphere of the rest stop, the old man's chilling warning, it was all too real. They had been lucky, incredibly lucky. The open road, once a symbol of freedom, now held a new meaning, a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edges of the map, a darkness they had narrowly escaped.
If you're a dog lover, this story will make your hair stand on end. Joe and his pit bull, Emmy, lived it. It started as a regular night walk. Joe and Emmy strolling under the moonlight. Half an hour in, they passed a stranger, someone who didn't look like he belonged. Joe shrugged it off, but 10 minutes later, that itchy feeling of being watched crept in. Joe glanced back. The same guy, standing there staring. They picked up the pace, aiming to get home. But the stranger followed. Joe warned him to back off, even threatened to sick Emmy on it. No reaction, not a word. So creepy. They jogged to a convenience store. Safety, finally. Or so Joe thought. After a while, the clerk closed shop. Stepping outside, there he was, the stalker hiding behind a telephone pole. Joe and Emmy bolted, running faster than ever. Home at last, they locked up tight, cameras on. The night was long and sleepless. In the morning,
in 1 mile, take a slight left turn onto Maple Street.
Joe never saw him again, but the memory still haunts him.
The old mansion stood on a hill. It was dark and ominous. Dead trees clawed at the rotting wood. A chill wind whistled through broken windows. Behind the mansion lay a cemetery. The graves were ancient and crumbling. Their stones were cracked and covered in moss. The air grew colder as you approached the cemetery. A sense of dread filled your heart. This was a place of shadows and whispers. It was a place where the dead refused to die. The iron gates of the cemetery creaked open. A raven let out a mournful cry. It was said that the mansion was haunted. People told stories of strange noises and eerie lights. Some claimed to have seen figures moving in the windows. But these were just stories. Or were they? The mansion had been empty for decades. No one dared to live there. The locals avoided the hill altogether. They knew that something evil lurked within those walls. It was a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin, and sometimes it tore completely.
Take a slight left
team
turn
of
onto Maple
paranormal
Street.
investigators arrived at the mansion. They were known as the Spectre Stompers. Their mission was to cleanse the mansion of its supernatural inhabitants. The team consisted
In half
of
a
4
mile,
members,
take a slight right
each with
turn onto
unique
Elm
skills.
Street.
There was Dr. Emily Carter, the brilliant parapsychologist. She studied the paranormal and could communicate with spirits. Ben Thompson was the tech expert. He used gadgets and gizmos to detect and analyze paranormal activity. Jake O'Malley was the muscle. He was a former military man who wasn't afraid of anything. And then there was Sarah Walker. She was the sensitive of the group. Sarah had the ability to sense and see spirits.
Like, there's always a Walker
As the
in
team
something.
unloaded their equipment, a cold wind blew through
Or
the cemetery.
Sarah.
The hairs on the back of their necks stood on end. They knew they were not alone. The Spectre Stompers were prepared for anything.
Sarah Connor.
They had spent years studying the paranormal. They had faced down countless ghosts and ghouls. But this mission felt different. The mansion on Cemetery Hill had a sinister aura. It felt ancient and powerful. The Spectre Stompers entered the mansion. They were greeted by an eerie silence. Dust covered everything. Cobwebs hung from the chandeliers. The air was heavy with the smell of decay. They began their investigation in the foyer.
Sarah could sense the presence of several spirits. They were angry and restless.
Ben set up his equipment. He detected high levels of electromagnetic energy. This confirmed what Sarah was feeling. The mansion was swarming with paranormal activity. Dr. Carter tried to communicate with the spirits. She wanted to understand why they were haunting the mansion, but the spirits were not interested in talking. They attacked. Objects flew across the room. Doors slammed shut. The temperature plummeted.
Jake used his strength to hold back the attacking spirits. He gave Dr. Carter time to work her magic.
She performed an ancient ritual. The ritual would force the spirits to cross over into the light. The Spectre Stompers spent weeks clearing the mansion. Room by room, they
Take a
confronted the
slight right
ghosts
turn
and
onto
ghouls.
Elm Street.
They faced down banshees and poltergeists. They even encountered a terrifying shadow creature, but they never gave up. They were determined to cleanse the mansion of its darkness.
In 3/4 of a
After
mile,
weeks
turn
of hard
right
work,
onto John
the
Stark
Spectre
Highway.
Stompers had cleared almost every room in the mansion. Only the attic remained. They cautiously climbed the creaky stairs. The attic was dark and dusty. Cobwebs covered everything. The air was thick with the smell of mothballs.
Sarah could sense a presence in the attic, but it felt different from the other spirits. This one wasn't
At the next
angry
stop
or
sign,
malevolent.
turn right.
Hello? Is anyone there?
A faint glow appeared in the corner of the attic. The glow intensified, revealing a young man. He was transparent and shimmering. He wore a sad smile on his face.
Who are you? Jake asked, his voice trembling slightly.
The ghost glided towards them. He was surrounded by a soft, warm light. Unlike the other spirits, this one didn't send chills down their spines.
Gets a slow start.
He seemed harmless.
Instead of just going for
My name is Daniel, the ghost said, his voice a gentle whisper. And this is my home.
At the stop sign, turn right onto John Stark Highway.
I died in the mansion many years ago. I was a kind and gentle soul. I have no desire to harm anyone.
Daniel loved the old mansion. He enjoyed watching over it from the other side. He didn't want to leave.
Please don't make me go. I belong here.
The Spectre Stompers were taken aback. They had never encountered a ghost like Daniel before. He wasn't threatening or malicious. He just wanted to stay in his home.
Wow, this is unexpected.
In about 7 miles,
I've
turn
never
left.
read about a spirit like this.
Dr. Carter, ever the scientist, was skeptical. She had never encountered a ghost that didn't need to move on. It went against everything she knew.
Dr. Carter, what do you think?
Dr. Carter began cautiously.
Daniel, typically spirits linger because they have unfinished business or unresolved emotions. But you seem at peace.
Daniel nodded sadly.
I am. I simply find solace in this place, in the memories it holds.
Despite Daniel's pleas, the Spectre Stompers were bound by their duty. They had to clear the mansion of all spirits. It was their job.
We tried to explain this to Daniel, but he didn't understand. He had been dead for so long, he didn't comprehend the world of the living.
Daniel's spectral form flickered as he became agitated. He tried to make them understand, but his words were lost in the static of the spectral plane. He was trapped between two worlds, unable to bridge the gap.
Sarah, however, could sense Daniel's desperation. She saw the fear in his eyes. She understood that he didn't want to leave his home.
Guys, maybe we don't have to do this.
Sarah, we have a job to do. Our job is to help spirits cross over, not let them linger.
But he's not hurting anyone. He's content here. Can't we just leave him be?
The Spectre Stompers argued amongst themselves. They had never faced a situation like this before. They didn't know what to do.
Daniel watched them, the spectral form flickering with anxiety. He could sense their conflict. He knew that his fate hung in the balance.
He's going to surge. Brace yourselves. As the argument reached its peak, Daniel panicked. He felt a surge of energy, a desperate need to escape the containment field. His form flickered violently, the warm light turning a sickly blue. He didn't want to harm them, but he couldn't bear the thought of leaving his home.
The force of Daniel's fear slammed into them like a physical blow. The Spectre Stompers were thrown back, their equipment clattering to the floor. Daniel, his form translucent and erratic, hovered near the attic window. The glass rattled and strained against the force of his spectral energy.
It's a truck in front.
I know.
Taking advantage of the chaos, Daniel made a last-ditch effort to reason with them.
You get it.
He appeared before Sarah, his spectral hand hovering over hers. The touch sent a jolt of energy through her. But
So it's rough on my brakes on
it was
that
filled
one.
with a desperate sadness.
Images flashed through Sarah's mind. Daniel laughing with his family in the mansion's once grand ballroom.
Just trying to sound like my
tending
truck.
his beloved garden, now overgrown and neglected. Daniel reading peacefully by the fireplace, now cold and empty. She saw the mansion not as a decaying shell, but as it once was, filled with warmth, life, and love.
Just wants to be home.
Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. She understood now. Daniel wasn't a threat. He was simply a lost soul clinging to the last vestiges of a life he cherished. Daniel turned towards the window, his form flickering sadly. He knew he couldn't fight them. He didn't want to. He just wanted to stay in his home.
The window shattered. A rush of wind filled the attic. Daniel turned back to the Spectre Stompers one last time. He gave them a sad smile. Then, with a whisper of wind, he was gone.
The Spectre Stompers watched as Daniel's essence dissipated into the night. They felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. They had done their job, but it didn't feel like a victory. They had taken a peaceful soul from his home.
As they packed up their equipment, Sarah lingered by the window. She looked out at the cemetery, now bathed in the soft light of dawn. She couldn't shake the feeling that they had done something wrong. Daniel had just wanted to stay in his home. Was that so much to ask?
Hey everyone. Today, I'm taking you to one of the eeriest places I've ever explored, an abandoned ghost town. Imagine walking through a place once teeming with life, now left to decay and the whispers of the past. Chills guaranteed. As I stepped into the ghost town, the first thing that hit me was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that wraps around you, making your skin crawl. The buildings stood like hollow sentinels, their windows broken and empty, staring down at us like hollow eyes. Every step we took echoed through the empty streets. The houses, once homes filled with laughter and life, now stood bare, their floors littered with debris. It was like walking through a forgotten time capsule, where every corner held a story waiting to be uncovered. The creepiest part, the noise, or rather the lack of it. It was so quiet that every rustle of the wind, every creak of the old wood felt like a ghostly presence. It was as if the town itself was alive, watching our every move. As we ventured deeper, we found an old schoolhouse. The desks were still there, covered in dust, as if the students had just upped and left.
Does this really make me
I could
wonder
almost
if I'm
hear the
closer to
faint echoes
campsite or
of
if I'm
children's
closer to the gas
laughter,
station?
now replaced by the haunting silence. The further we went, the more intense the feeling of being watched became.
I'm gonna assume
I
the
could
gas
swear
station
I saw shadows moving out of the corner of my eye. But every time I turned, there was nothing. Just the oppressive silence and the overwhelming sense of being observed. We came across an old church, its bell long gone, but the sense of reverence still lingering. Inside, the pews were rotting, but the altar remained, almost untouched. It was a bizarre juxtaposition, a place of faith amidst the decay. As the sun began to set, the shadows grew longer, and the town took on an even more sinister feel. We decided it was time to leave, but the ghost town had one last surprise. On our way out, we heard a door creak open, slowly, chillingly. We turned, hearts pounding, lights darting, but there was nothing. Just the door swinging gently in the breeze. It was a stark reminder that some places hold on to their past, their ghosts and their secrets. And sometimes those secrets don't want to let go.
3 hours in this truck.
So if you ever find yourself in an abandoned ghost town, remember to tread carefully. You never know who or what might be watching. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more spine-chilling adventures. The air hung heavy and silent. Dust devils danced across the cracked asphalt. Welcome to Jericho Flats Gas and Grub, a beacon of faded neon and flickering fluorescence in a sea of endless desert. One pump, rusty
in 1 mile,
and
turn
dry,
left.
stood sentinel by the cracked concrete island. Inside, the shelves were bare except for a few dusty cans of beans and a lone melted candy bar. The air smelled of stale coffee and something cold, metallic, like blood. A beat-up Ford pickup rattled to a stop by the single pump. John, a weary traveller, stepped out, wiping sweat from his brow. He needed gas, a break, anything to break the monotony of the endless highway. A figure emerged from the shadows of the gas station, tall, gaunt, with eyes that glinted in the setting sun. He moved with an unsettling grace, a predator sizing up its prey. "Need some help, friend?" the figure rasped, his voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement. John felt a chill crawl down his spine. He had a bad feeling, a very bad feeling. They never arrived at once, these phantoms. No, they materialized like wisps of smoke, their movements barely perceptible. Pale faces, empty eyes, and smiles that promised only pain. Travelers, lured by the promise of fuel and respite, would find themselves trapped in their web of terror. Whispers of their deeds travelled on the wind, carried by those lucky enough to escape Jericho Flats. Stories of unimaginable cruelty, of lives taken with a chilling silence. Section 4, a town held hostage. 20 miles down the highway, nestled between Red Rock canyons, lay the town of Jericho Flats. Or what was left of it. The townsfolk knew. They whispered of the
Go past this light, then at the next one,
their voices
turn
tight
left.
with fear. No law enforcement dared to venture near. The sheriff, his deputies, all gone, vanished without a trace.
At the light, turn left.
Chilling silence that echoed through the empty streets. Section 5.
They're rare to see
no
now.
escape.
Very rare.
John backed
Used
away
to be able to
slowly,
see
his
him on
hand
every
shaking as he
fucking turn
fumbled
and
for his
corner.
keys.
Yep.
The figure smiled, a slow, predatory stretching of thin
dude.
lips.
Come on, dude.
John knew then
Come on,
with a
dude.
horrifying certainty that he wouldn't be leaving Jericho.
Oh my god, come on!
You've entered the
His foot
parking
caught
lot for
on
your
the edge of the
destination.
pavement. He fell, the keys skittering across the asphalt. The figure moved closer, and in the silence of the desert night, John's scream was swallowed
Yeah,
whole.
you got a brand new car, but, you know, I've driven it.
The old clock
Plus, it's
tower
a Chevy.
chimed 8 times.
Should be able to punch it like nothing.
Arrived.
Timmy, a mischievous ghost boy, floated out of his bed. He wore a tattered school uniform and a mischievous grin.
Another day, another adventure.
Timmy zoomed through walls, giggling at the startled pigeons in the attic. His translucent sneakers barely touched the creaky stairs as he made his way to the ghostly school. Outside, the morning mist swirled. Timmy drifted through the park, past the rusty swings and the silent slide. He waved to Mrs. Periwinkle, a grumpy ghost pushing a ghostly pram.
Morning, Timmy!
She croaked, her voice like dry leaves rustling. Timmy giggled and floated on. He reached the old abandoned schoolhouse at the edge of town. The building loomed dark and silent except for the faint giggling of his ghost classmates. School was about to begin, and for Timmy, that meant more chances for fun and games.